Welcome to dojo.live, the place where top minds in travel and hospitality check in to share insights and breakthroughs shaping the industry. Brought to you by Encora, your trusted partner for AI, cloud, and data-driven innovation. Enjoy your stay. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Encora's Dojo Live, where we have candid conversations with industry leaders who are tackling the biggest technology challenges in travel and hospitality. I'm your host, Kim Lantis, and today we're diving into episode number 4 of our series, Unlocking Revenue Insights from Hospitality's RMS Leaders. Discussing today is what's today's revenue team needs. It's a classic with a twist. And here to help me is my co-host, America Guerrero.
Hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. Nice to meet you, Tess.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And leading us with her insights on the topic is Tess McGoldrick, SVP of Travel and Hospitality at Revenue Analytics. Tess, thank you also from myself for being here today. It's great to have you.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks for including me.
No, it's our pleasure. We look forward to seeing what the classic is and what the twist is. But before we dive into that, I would like to get to know your story a bit. If you could share some of your background, what you do with revenue analytics, and of course, the key challenges you're helping as a company to solve. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I joined Revenue Analytics about 12 years ago. I like to say I learned from the best in the business when it comes to pricing and revenue management. And along that journey, we became a software as a service company back in 2019, where we decided to go build products specific to pricing and revenue management just across a lot of different industry verticals. So I have the pleasure of leading our travel and hospitality vertical and launching a piece of software in October of 2020, which you can imagine was a fantastic time to launch technology in the travel and hospitality space. But we've seen the product grow a lot, and some of the twist that I'm excited to share about today is some of the unique problems that we see above property revenue managers facing.
Awesome. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I love it. Yeah, 2020, great year.
Yeah, great time.
So let's talk about these twists. Of course, your episode title hints on a balance between what is, I suppose, the traditional as well as the innovation. That's my kind of interpretation of this. So let's first start with the classic revenue management principles that I guess are still holding strong today.
It's funny. One of our co-founders, Bob Cross, started the kind of first principles of revenue management back in his days at Delta Airlines and some work that he had done with Marriott back in the day as well. And the principles are the same. We're trying to sell the right product to the right customer at the right price at the right time. And so a lot of those started with the idea of an inventory optimization. Let's save the room for the right guest. Let's save the seat for the right guest. And as the practice continued to evolve, things like price optimization entered the story. And so now it's also about setting the right price, not just holding the inventory. And so a lot of those, while the principles have evolved, it's kind of amazing to me that sometimes we still see systems that don't hold true to some of those classics. And so part of the things that we like to make sure of whenever we're helping our customers is that we're addressing the classics. We're helping them from good demand forecasting to setting the right price to holding the right room, and then innovating, continuing to leverage new technology. AI has come a long way, even though it's a buzzword. It's also something that we've all been using for a long time when we think about machine learning modules. But those things will continue to evolve. Scale will get better, but there certainly is that twist that we're seeing shape in the industry as well.
Nice.
All right.
You touched about AI, and I would like to know more about data. If there are any key data points that factor into pricing decisions today, are revenue managers working with more complex inputs than before?
Yeah, I love the idea that we can try to get folks out of the Excel spreadsheet. Because for a while, right, it was just looking at in an Excel spreadsheet, what did demand do last year? How was it priced and moving forward? But as we continue to see scale and innovation with cloud technology and AI, the classics stay. We still need a lot of that reservation data. We still need to know what capacity is. but the possibilities have really opened up in terms of additional data sources that can come in. We've seen competitive information coming in. We work with other partners who do things like market demand forecasts and how that could influence my own hotel, guest sentiment scores. How does that impact the demand coming into your hotel? And so again, I think that's another one of the areas that the principles are the same, but the possibilities in the universe of what could come in and what can influence a system have grown exponentially.
Absolutely. I love the guest sentiment side. I think that's a definite trend of where we're hitting on and where, the industry is necessary in terms of experience and just the great time we get to live in. But let's talk about the flip side. What's the twist? What's shifting in revenue management today that requires, let's say, that fresh approach? And of course, also what's driving that change?
It's funny, we used to talk a lot about like a DORM, a director of revenue management. And kind of before we were a software as a service company, we were helping a lot of really big enterprises build proprietary systems. And our primary user used to be a director of revenue management who was probably sitting in a basement. I hate that that's where we were putting revenue managers, but oftentimes they would sit on property somewhere in the basement and they would work cross-functionally. They'd have peers on property, but they really lived and breathed everything about that single hotel. And so they'd ask for more data and they dive into the data and obsess over just that property. But what we started seeing is this shift of clustering revenue managers. So pulling them out of the basement, putting them in a central office, letting folks work from home. But it meant that you were working with 2 hotels, 3 hotels, 5 hotels. And so some of the hypothesis that we had as we were trying to think about how we can better serve these people was if we see a study that says the current, and this was back in 2020, it was an average of like 1 person to 11 properties. We're like, can you imagine sitting in a system going hotel by hotel, day by day? You don't have the time to obsess over every single individual property in the same way. And so we really saw an opportunity of like, the twist is how are people actually doing the work? Not necessarily the work itself. And then how could we help them adapt the ways of working?
Wow. 11, like one child. I've got 2 children. I tapped out at 2. I can't imagine 11, or in this case, 11 properties. Is there even higher numbers than that? Or
yeah, we did a look back kind of at our user base recently. And again, our hypothesis when we built the platform was 1 to 11. And I asked our product owner, I was like, we keep using that as we're talking to people, but is that reality? Like, should I be using a different number? Are we off base? And looked at the data, and our average user, and again, across about 9,300 hotels on the platform, one person manages 27 properties. That is our current average as of, gosh, a couple of weeks ago, whenever we recently pulled the data. And so it's certainly changed for sure.
Wow. So I understand that the math has and pretty much will be stay the same. So that's the classic. And the real evolution is on the people side of the question, especially since advances in technology has made it possible for revenue managers to do much more in less time. So what does this mean for them personally and for their role?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the notion of like do more with less is something that is really hard if you're not set up for success. If you've got systems that haven't changed the way that you're thinking about it, but you're still being asked to, hey, don't manage 1, manage 11, don't manage 11, manage 27, but you still actually have to work one by one. I think that can be really challenging, and it can lead to, I think, some of the talent issues that we've seen as an industry as well, where more with less isn't fulfilling people. And so some of our reasons for why we were designing our tool the way that we did was, let's get people in and just working differently. Manage it by exception. Let the system take care of the low-hanging fruit. automate that, and then raise up these different opportunities for our revenue managers, really help them focus on where they spend their time. And in doing so, if we can then give them some time back, I think you have an interesting question too about like, what should they do with that time? We've had people say, I want them to have more work-life balance. We've had people say, it's the commercial responsibility of the property, and let's spend more time focused on strategy and less time looking back on how we did, be more forward-looking than retroactive. And that takes time. But you have to give time back to people in order to ask more of them.
Wow. And what are the barriers? I mean, with the potential for revenue managers to handle, as you said, more and more properties, what challenges arise when taking a new hotel? What are the biggest barriers out there?
I think that some of them are that every property is still very unique. We haven't, even when you think about a single ownership group or a similar brand, you really still have all of this notion of like each hotel still has unique demand patterns and a different competitive set and different ways that customers are reacting to pricing changes. And so something that I think will never kind of go away is that the setup, the configuration, the uniqueness of each property still needs to be honored whenever you're setting up a system. And that can take a little bit of time to get comfortable. Honestly, one of the things that we've seen as people, we're managing multiple properties, they bring another one on is, well, my comfort level with that first property, like I want to take some time. I want to learn and I want to see what the system's doing. And we try to set folks up for success in that, where we want to earn their trust behind these decisions and then gradually over time increase the automation, again, making them comfortable and being very user-centric about things. Maybe less so on the, this is what the data says and you will like it kind of mentality that I think people fear a little bit.
Yeah, I think it allows people to go back to the word you used at the beginning of the show, which is obsess, right? Like by being able to lean on the technology to get the lower hanging fruit, because I'm now forced to be doing more with less, but the system gives me, the more to do it. And now I get to kind of come back to my original passion or that obsession. With this time that people are having, are you seeing that there's also shifts happening in the broader commercial team? Are these dorms and the revenue managers coming out of the basement? And what does that mean? Are they able to be more creative? Are they now overflowing into, other elements of the hotels? And also, this I think probably sounds great in theory, but let's go back to some of the challenges. What can this look like in real life?
I think that one of the, if anybody's been to a conference in the last 2 years, I think we hear commercial strategy, commercial strategy, commercial strategy. And for a little bit, I think it's been like, what does that really mean in practice? Like, you want me to be strategic and you want me to move into this commercial function, but like, how do I do that? And so I do think with some of the time that we've given folks back on like the low hanging fruit side of things, we've seen an increased amount of just time spent with cross-functional peers. So spending more time forward-looking, having meaningful strategic meetings with marketing, with sales, with revenue, all together in the room, thinking about future goals. And I think that some of the challenges that come with that, A, is metrics and how different people have different metrics and different definitions of what success looks like. But I think one of the other things that I've started hearing from people is, it's great. We're out of the silos. We're all working together. Kumbaya. Like, let's high five each other. But now you're starting to mess with my stuff. And kind of like the kids in the sandbox who like they had their toys and now somebody's coming for them. I think that there's a little bit of that reset that we need on what do we mean and who owns what, who's responsible, that is a great problem to have. Like, I'm glad that we're finally facing that as a question as opposed to still talking about everybody being in silos.
Absolutely. When it comes to sort of these turf wars, this sandbox tug of war, do you have any sort of tips or strategies that you've seen that have kind of gone into play in order to help everyone sort of adapt to these changes?
Yeah, call it my old we used to be a consulting firm, and so I still have all of these, like, consulting frameworks in my brain that will pull out every now and then, but I hadn't quite realized that it wasn't as common. So, we have historically used something called a RACI matrix. So, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And just having some of those explicit conversations about, okay, we're talking about bringing in some group business, and we're trying to figure out if that is a good piece of business for us to take or not. Who's responsible for signing the group, making the decision? Who's ultimately accountable to how it shakes out, like performance wise? What is this going to really mean for us? Versus whose opinion are we asking, and who are we just letting them know this is the decision that we're making and why we're making it? And I think some of those explicit conversations are the kinds of things that are really going to help ease some of the unspoken tension about if you're playing with my toy in the sandbox.
I love
Absolutely.
how in this industry we can implement systems, we can implement technology, but at the end, everything goes back to human behavior, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it's like you said with kids. With all these shifts, do you have a hypothesis on what's next? What key trends or innovations are headed in the future or way?
Yeah, I think some of the direction that we'll probably start seeing folks go is if we're really thinking about true commercial strategy, it's not just rooms revenue that's happening on property, right? Depending on your property, you can have other outlets, whether it's spa or F&B or anything else sort of on the property that's coming in. I do think that there's an opportunity then to start expanding the scope of the conversation. So free up the time, again, start thinking more strategically, and then what's next? Like, what's the next frontier? And I think that moving to more of a total revenue optimization is one. The other one I think is probably around just getting some better KPIs of profitability. There are other amazing tech providers out there that are starting to be able to really dissect different components of the business to say, what's really profitable? Like, I know we've been saying direct business is best, but like, is it with all of the marketing dollars that you're putting behind it? And so I think that there's a huge opportunity as we start thinking about expanding that commercial function that folks are really going to be able to get their teeth on some great data pretty soon.
I love it. It's super exciting. And I would like to shift as we're here kind of at the end of the conversation toward revenue analytics specifically, if I might, give you the opportunity to speak about your product and how it is that you've built this so that the commercial teams can work more in conjunction so that the revenue managers themselves are able to handle all of this yet still feel that passion, that obsession, and in terms of just that life balance as well. Like, what's the reality of what's happening inside platforms like yours? How often are people checking in? What's the technology being able to do for them?
Yeah, so our big hypothesis when we built the tool was let's serve these above property revenue managers. Let's give them these exceptions, float them to the top, have them come in, drink their coffee in the morning, drink their tea, and be able to say, this is where I'm going to make the most money. Go, go, go. And really like clear out the biggest opportunities first thing in the morning. And then there are the revenue management hygiene things, right? People still love a calendar, sort things by day, still look at a property if you've got a call with an owner and you're prepping for it. There still is the single property mentality. But whenever you're thinking about like, how am I going to have the biggest impact? You have to have something that serves that up to you. And so again, and we're testing our own hypotheses. I was asking our product team, I said, I really tell people all the time, like, drink your coffee and tea in the morning, take care of your biggest exceptions. Like, do they do that? Please tell me that they actually do that. And what we found is that our kind of average user session is about 12 and a half minutes. And that we see users then have multiple sessions in the day. So they'll come in and drink their coffee in the morning and knock out their biggest exceptions and tackle that in about 12 and a half minutes. And then be able to go take care of some other things, right? Go dive into data in a BI platform, have a revenue call, work with the marketing team, work with the sales team in a commercial strategy function. Come back later. Another optimization ran, other exceptions to review. Pull up the tool and take a look at it so that they can share it on a call with an owner. And so I think that that's been one of the biggest things that we've seen as being different about how we think about things, is really very user focused. Keep the classics, give them great data science, give them great analytics, but really focus on them and their experience and how we can make their lives easier.
I love that. I love that. And I like how, the people behind your product are the ones that are in the trenches. Like, you ask those questions, you know the right questions to ask. Going back to your, don't make me try to repeat the acronym, RACI acronym. Like,
Yes.
we're gonna pull that out post show. It's a really good tip to follow. But I remember the accountability part. But you're applying this in your team as well, and you're taking your users into consideration. What types of conversations are you having then also with the revenue managers out there?
One of the biggest things that we have, both a challenge and a really good thing, I think, with our some of the revenue managers we talk with, is that this is such a mindset shift. Like, people are so used to doing things by property. And so when you first log into our tool, they're like, it's out of order. The dates are out of order. It's like, they're supposed to be. Let's talk about why again. And so a lot of the conversations that we're having with folks are kind of change management, helping them along that journey about reshaping the mindset and the unique opportunity that they have to free up some of their time and still come back and go property by property, not preventing that. But that's one of the biggest things that we've seen. We have a great story. I've got a user who, we do little micro surveys in the platform where we ask people, how's it going? And give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And he gave us a thumbs down. And, I consider this my third baby. And I was a little bit like, excuse me. And so we reached out. Why? Like, tell us more. We want to help you. And we eventually got there. And this individual then went on to be one of the biggest champions for the platform with his team. He was like, guys, I know they're going to tell you that it's different, but really, you just have to change how you're thinking about things. And so we try to take that thoughtful approach as well, and get the feedback, and hopefully also create some kind of internal champions at each one of our customers to have those advocates.
Absolutely. And I think that's an amazing approach because to what we talked about earlier in the show, this is the direction in where things are headed, right? It's going to be more tech, faster speed, more responsibility, but to America's point and to yours all along, keeping the people, right? The human side of it, and just the passion, I think, behind the industry itself of who we are, not to forget what hospitality really is all about. As we wrap up our conversation today, we're talking about classic with a twist. Obviously, we had this show earlier last week with Christy White of Group 360, and we're all about the cocktails.
Love it.
And so, classic with a twist. In my mind, let's put the coffee away here. What would you pick as a cocktail to best describe or represent modern revenue management?
So, as somebody who's had a cocktail with Christy White, I am not surprised that also had come up. So she is fantastic, and I look forward to our next cocktail together. I like a classic martini personally, but my twist on it is just, you can find any martini that you want. throw some espresso in it. That's my current fave. And so I think that's kind of the fun twist. Each property is unique. They all have unique needs. You can create your own unique martini whichever way you want. So
I
that
love
would be
it.
my
So it's vodka, right? That mixes with any flavor you could desire.
exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, Tess, for your time today. It's been a wonderful conversation. And I mean, just I'm still stuck here on like the core math staying the same, obviously getting better and more efficient with the technology, but the role itself shifting, all about the change management side. Your wonderful tips on how to go about doing that, as we're pushing and pushing to do more with less. And thankfully, there's the technology behind it, like revenue analytics, to make that possible. Now, but before we go, if others would like to learn more about revenue analytics, connect with you or your team, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
So whenever you are here after, I think 10 years is whenever you get it, you get a new email address. It's just Tess at Revenue Analytics. That easy. Happy to connect that way. LinkedIn. I think our website was shared as well. All of those will work.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love it. She's just Tess now.
Just
She's been there that long. Now, if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow Dojo Live for more insights from industry leaders. You can catch our past episodes and stay updated on upcoming discussions at dojo.live, our website. And of course, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and X. For what's next for us, join us tomorrow, Thursday, February 27th, also at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific, as we dive into how causal AI is helping hotels optimize pricing and promotions. That's with Nikhil Shah and Josh Graham of Cloudbeds. So until then, stay curious, stay innovative, and bye for now. Thank you.